Okay.
Okay,
All right.
good morning, Vincent.
Good morning, Marcel. All right.
Good morning, everyone at the other end.
Hi, everyone. So, welcome to this first live streaming event for ITI 1121. Hopefully, everything is working fine for you. If we have a look here, we should be seeing. If you have something to say in the chat, we should be seeing it. So, if something is going wrong, say it there. Okay, so the goal here is simply to have a chat about some simple steps that you need to be able to take in order to write code in Java.
Yeah, and it's very important to understand that the aim this morning is not to learn about object-oriented programming, all these things. What we're aiming for is really for you to be able to do the assignment 0.
That's right.
So very basic things, but very important things.
Right. Okay, so how about we start then? So in order to be able to do anything, you need to be able, in Java in that case, you need to be able to compile your code. If you cannot compile your codes, then everything else is irrelevant.
Yeah, that's the most important thing at this point, is really to be able to edit, compile, and run very simple programs. So let's
That's right.
Start with that.
Okay. So, all right, let me just... So the first thing we are going to look at is the shell.
Yes.
The prompt, the whatever you call it.
Yeah. Could be PowerShell in Windows.
That's right. Yeah, someone asked about it this morning.
Yeah, a terminal, a shell in Linux.
Something that lets you type commands and run them directly. So let's do that. I open a terminal here. So in this case, it's on Mac OS. And so, but if you are on Windows, if you're on Linux, it's going to be pretty similar, not exactly the same thing, but it's going to be pretty similar. So here I have a command prompt and I can type into it. The first thing I'm going to do is type to see if I can compile. So and the compiler is called Java-C, Java compiler. So I'm just typing the name of the compiler, Java-C, and okay, let's see. Let's print out the version of the compiler that I have here. So return. There you go. So something comes up. The command was understood.
Yeah, and it's here you see that the version of the compiler is 1.8 and minor release 101. It's not very important if your particular installation has a minor number other than the one you see here. In fact, any compiler that's 1.5 and above would do. So if you have something pre-installed on your computer and it's a 1.5 and above, you're all good to go.
That's right. Okay, but if you don't, stop this, hold on this video, just go look at the other videos that we have, the instruction, install this compiler, because you won't be able to proceed without that.
Yeah, correct. We're not going to explain how to install the compiler. It has been done. It's a different video.
That's right.
Maybe the other thing that's very important as well is we're not going to go through every detail telling what is the meaning of every keyword, but we really promise that in the next few weeks we will do so in class. So it's very important to be able to follow up without fully understanding everything. That's something that's going to be part of your life as a programmer. Whenever you come to a new environment, there's a lot of keywords, everything is new, but you got to feel comfortable about these things.
Right. You also want to get a habit of trying to understand it as soon as you can, which you are going to do here in a few weeks, really.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to our terminal here. Okay, I've lost my shell here. Let's go back here, and so a couple of things really. If I want to list, so I'm in a particular directory. In that case, I'm in my home directory, and if I want to list the content of that directory in on a shell, on a Unix-like shell, I'm going to type ls lists, and it shows me a few things here. If you are on Windows, you type dir, and you're going to get the same thing. So I'm going to create a subdirectory, and I'm going to use that subdirectory for today. So mkdir to create the directory. It's the same thing on Windows. And I'm going to call that ITI 1121. All right, so now if I list again, I can see that I have a directory ITI 1121. Let's cd into it, change directory. So now I am in that directory, and if I list the content of that directory, it's empty.
Fantastic.
All right, so what do we do next? Let's create some code. How about that?
Yeah, let's create a small example.
All right. So, in order to create code, what I need is a text editor. And I need to be able to type some code somewhere, save it, and then use the shell to compile that and execute that.
Correct. And we're going to be using Sublime.
That's right. That's the one you see on the left here.
But there's many other source editors that are available. Sublime has a cost. It's $80 US. On our website, you can find links for editors that are free, such as Notepad++,
That's right.
BB-Edit, and so on.
All right. And the version that I have here of Sublime, by the way, is unregistered. It's not because I haven't paid for it, it's because I've just created a new account for this demo, and my paid version is on my other account. All right, so let's do that. I need to go into Sublime Text, and so let's start writing a minimum shell code that I will be able to use. So as we said, there are things that we are not going to comment right now about. So just public class is something you have to type, just type it. And we're going to call that class test. Not very original, but this is going to work. So public class tests. Here we go. So we have some sort of something, and one thing that we can notice is that the editor here is not helping. It's not showing anything differently. Public class test, all white, all the same font.
Yeah, the keywords are not shown in different color. If you look at the right lower corner of the screen, you see that it says plain text, so it doesn't know that this is a Java program.
Right. And it doesn't know because, well, it has no way of knowing, really. So the way it's going to learn about it, I mean, there are different ways, but one way is to actually save this file and give it the extension .java, and then Sublime will infer from that this is a Java program, and thus it will use the Java keywords as it's showing that. So how do I do that? I am going to save my file, here, and as I'm saving this file, I'm not sure you see that actually, but I'm just saving that file in my ITI 1121 directory, and I'm calling this file test.java.
So here the file name is very important. The class is called test. The name of the file has to be test.java.
That's right. It has to match.
And what we will see in the future is that for classes, we have to start the name of the class with a capital letter.
That's right, which is why I used an uppercase T here for test. So now I have this file, public class in red, those are keywords, and then test.
So immediately we see that the editor is using colors, so it means it has recognized that this is a Java program. It can be seen in the corner here in the right lower corner, it says Java. So maybe we can try to compile this thing.
Yes, so that's one thing that we like to do, compile often.
I would never type more than 1 or 2 lines before I compile.
Right. So pretty much what you're saying is every time it should be compilable, try it.
Correct.
Now, of course, it has to be, you cannot be in the middle of a block or something without the closing parenthesis because it won't compile. But as soon as you are in a situation where possibly you could compile, you should try it because, this way you are not accumulating problems and it will be much easier to solve as you find out your problems. So let's do that. Let's go to the terminal now, and if I list the contents of my directory now, I can see that test.java is here. And if I just list the contents of that file, you can see that this is what I typed in the editor. All right, so let's compile it. Javac test.java. Yes.
All right. Why don't we look at the content of the directory?
All right, let's see what happened. ls. Oh, okay.
So now there's 2 files. One of them is the dot class. So
what is that?
well, I don't know. So we've used Javac, the Java compiler. We gave it as input test.java, and the result, the output, is test.class. So this is the assembly language for the Java virtual machine. In principle, that's something that the Java virtual machine can execute.
Okay.
Maybe we can try.
If it can execute it, why don't we execute it? So let's go back to this guy here, and I'm just going to zoom on it. And so to execute it, now it's not the compiler anymore. It's not Javac. It's the actual virtual machine Java, and I want to execute test.class, and you don't have to say .class here. So Java test. We'll try to run this test.class binary file.
Okay, so obviously we're not so surprised. We knew this would happen.
Did we?
So we're trying to run the test program, and here it's very important that you learn to understand what the Java virtual machine or the compiler is telling you, because these messages are really meaningful. So here it's saying main method not found in class test. So this program test we're trying to execute does not have a method called main that has a signature as follows, where after the name main, there's the list of argument is composed of a single parameter called args in this case, and it's a reference to an array of strings. So the Java virtual machine has to know how to start this program, how to bootstrap the execution of our test program. So it's looking for a method called main with exactly that particular signature.
That's right. It's always doing that. So you can compile any .java file in order to get a .class, and the compiler is happy with that. But if you want to start a program, you start from one of these .class. It will look for the main method in that .class, and so it has to be in the .java in order to make it into the .class. And so if you are going to start your program from a particular class, that class should have a main. So let's add a main to our shell here, to our class. So what it's looking for is something that is public, static. Again, let's not worry about this. We just have to type that public static void, and then main, and main has an argument which is an array of string. So that's an array of reference, by the way, and we are going to have an argument here which we are going to happily ignore. All right, so now we have a main.
So if the theory is right, we should be able to compile this thing and run it.
Okay, so I save that. Don't forget to save, and then I go to my terminal. I'm going to compile again. Okay, compilation works, and I am going to run it. It's a success of sort. It's not complaining.
No, so the previous time when we tried to run the test program, the Java virtual machine was saying you don't have a main method. So here, nothing has been printed, and in fact makes a lot of sense. Our main method is not doing anything.
That's right. There is a question here, where should I save the file test? It does not matter, but so here I created a subdirectory called ITI1121 in my home directory. You can put it wherever you want, but just you have to make sure that then with your shell you go to the same directory. So you put it somewhere, and then with the shell you go to that directory, and you should see the file you have, and then that works.
So maybe we can do an ls again to show the content of that directory.
Right. It's still so we still have both the Java and the class file.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is working. This is executing. It's doing nothing, and it's doing nothing for the good reason that there's nothing to do here. And so perhaps we should actually do something. So we could simply put some code here, but instead why not create another class and try to get those two classes to do something together.
Okay, yeah, let's go with that.
Okay, so I am creating now a new class. So public again, class, and again you can see that the editor does not recognize that as a Java class because, well, it's not a Java class just yet.
Maybe we could use the little menu on the lower right corner to show a different way to tell the Sublime that it's about a Java.
The problem is I don't think they see that.
Oh, okay.
So let's not do that. But if you are using Sublime, on the bottom right it says plain text. If you click here, you can specify actually this is a Java program, and then that will tell Sublime what it is. But what we are going to do is simply save that as utils.java, which I think you don't see either. But it has been saved. Now you can see the name of the file is util.java, and if I go back to my terminal and I list that, I now have those two Java files and the one class file that I compiled earlier. So let's go back to my util, and we want to add a method in that class that we will be able to call.
Correct.
All right. So this is going to be a simple method. We just want to be able to print something.
Some message that we will provide as an argument to the method, for instance.
All right. So again, let's not just type that public static. We'll understand that very soon. Very static. It is also a void method, like the main, and we are going to call that method say. And say will get one argument, and that argument is going to be a string, and that is going to be the message. And the goal of that method is simply to print the message that it's receiving.
Yeah, and here maybe we could just say that the void is the type of the return value. This particular program will not return anything, so our way to tell the compiler that it's not an error, it was our intention not to return anything, is to say that the type of the return value is void.
Perfect. All right, so how do I print something on using Java? Well, it's a bit awkward, but system.out, there is an uppercase at system, there is a lowercase at out. This is going to tell us a lot, but right now we just type that. system.out.println. So it's going to print on the standard output, and println means it's going to print and then have a new line. And what I want to print here is just the message.
Sounds good.
That's good. So I save that. Now that I have this class that has this method, in my tests, what I can do is, well,
maybe we could compile this thing
That's true.
before to make sure that...
That's very true. Silly me. I am not compiling something I could. All right. So again, here I have my utils.java, and I'm compiling it.
You're so good.
Success.
Success.
All right. I feel good about this one. Let's see if I can now call this method. So let's say I want to. So how do I call from this something that is there?
Yeah, that's the tricky part, I guess, is we want to call the method say of the class utils, but we want to call it from the class test.
Okay, so, and because of the way we have defined it, the way to do it is to simply name the class and then call the method of that class.
Maybe we could try first to call the method that we just defined, say, passing a message.
So say. Is this working?
Okay.
Up.
And then the idea here is we know it's going to generate an error message, but it's very important to...
We're completely on top of that.
Yeah, it's very important to learn about these error messages, because that's how you're going to be rapidly finding the errors and be back on your feet.
All right, so let's compile that guy. This is Java compile, and I want to compile tests.java. And it's not happy.
Yeah, so here it's saying cannot find symbol say, so it's not finding a method say that has a parameter of type string. It's not finding it because if we look into Sublime and we look into the class test, there's no method called say. So here we have to tell the compiler that the method we're interested in is found in the class utils, and so it's a very simple process. We just need to prefix the call with the name of the class.
So utils.say tells the compiler, well, this method will be found in this other class utils, which happens to be right there. Okay, so if I save that, okay, if I save that and I compile again now,
it's happy.
Compiler is happier. Let's see if it works. Yeah.
So yes, so that really is showing a pattern that we're going to be using very frequently. There's one class that has a main method, and it's calling methods from other classes.
That's right. In fact, in the lab, in the assignment 0, there is that very much similar call. Okay, so now we have a method that we can use in order to print a message in util. What else can we do? Well, the goal here is to try different things. So how about we look at an iteration?
Oh yes, I guess so. The goal of the next examples will be to go through different scenarios. One of them we're going to look at using an iteration. We're going to add some tests. So we'll try to look at different elements of the syntax of Java that are essential for the assignment 0.
So what we're going to do is create another method. We'll call it say as well. In Java, you can have more than one method with the same name as long as the arguments are different. We're going to see that very soon. So this is going to be the same method. So public static void say, and it gets the message, but we want to pass another argument, which is the number of times this message is going to be printed.
Correct.
Okay, so int n. And the goal here is to print that message n time.
Yeah, and from the point of view of the compiler, there's no ambiguity here. There are two methods, they have the same name, but it's clear. There's one that has only one parameter, the other one has two parameters. As long as the signature of the method has, so this list of parameters is different, the compiler will not be confused.
That's right. Okay, so let's iterate. So to iterate, there are different ways. The most common one probably, well, I don't know most common, but a very common one is a for loop. So we are asked to print this message n times, so we can use a for loop to iterate from 0 to n minus 1 or from 1 to n, and every time print the message. So in Java, if we want to do that, we'll go for, and then we have to have a counter. So let's use an integer, int I, and initially I is assigned 0. So if I start at 0, I have to go up to n minus 1 if I want a total of n. So I is less than n. And then I will, actually, why am I not on this thing here? Sorry, let's zooming here. Yeah, and then I need to increment my counter I.
So we will be repeating the content of the for loop as long as the value of I is smaller than n. We're starting at 0, so we're going to do it exactly n times.
Yes, so that's the initialization part, that's the halting condition, and this is what happens every time you go through the loop.
Maybe that would be a good time to maybe just compile this to see if the syntax
Absolutely.
works.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to compile. Did I save it? Yes, I did. Utils.java. Yup.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. So now we need to well, to print the message.
Correct.
How am I going to do that? Well, I could type again, systems.out, etc. But in fact, I already have a method that prints a message.
Correct.
Why don't I use it?
Yeah, and it shows an example where we can call a method, and because it's in the same class, we don't need to actually use the name of the class to make the call.
There you go. So
yeah, so here that's calling the method say, but it's the one that has only one parameter of type string. So it's the one we first define.
okay, so I'm going to compile that. Yep. Okay, so that works. Now that I have this great method, I have to call it.
Correct. So where will you do that?
Well, I have this test method here in the main. Why don't I use that to test my method?
Okay.
So utils dot say. What am I going to say? Live from Ottawa, and I'm going to say that a number of times. Say 7 times.
7's good number.
All right. So again, I go here. I am going to compile. Now I have to compile tests, which I just modify. That works, and I execute it. Yep.
Fantastic.
And you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so that worked. That worked. What is the next step? Well, we could have used something else than a for loop.
Yeah. Most programming languages have the concept of a while loop.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to use the while loop probably quite a bit when traversing the lists, for instance.
That's right.
So let's try that.
All right, let's do that. So, yeah, I have to go back here. So what I'm going to do is comment out this portion here. That this thing is going to comment everything that's between this and this.
Mm-hmm.
And this way I can keep the code here while I'm typing another piece of code. So what I want to do now is print the message while I've not printed it n times. So I have different ways of doing that, but since I am receiving this value n as a parameter, I could use n as the starting point and then decrease this value every time I go through the loop until I reach 0.
Yeah, so that's going to show another way of implementing this iteration. So we're using the value of the parameter here.
So while n is more than 0, what do I want to do? I want to print my message, and then I should not forget to do what? If I were to print that, it would work. Well, I mean, it would compile. But what would happen if I were to, that's the wrong one, but anyways, it would compile. What would happen if I were to run that at this point? I don't want to necessarily try that because I don't know that's going to agree too much with the streaming thing, but what would happen here is that while n is more than 0, I'm going to print this.
But because you're not changing the value of n, I guess we would be stuck in an infinite loop.
That's right, that would be a big bug, and it would just run forever.
Yeah.
Print, 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 and the computer will complain, and then I'll have to kill the program.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do that. We like our programs. So let's simply decrease the value of n by 1 at every iteration. I can do that by typing that, for example. There are other ways. You often see minus minus. Doesn't matter really what you use. We're just going to use -1.
Correct.
Okay, I save that. I go back here and I compile and I execute my test, and it works just the same way.
I have an idea. Why
good.
don't? So the whole point of being live is to try things.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
why don't we go to the test?
The test, okay?
Okay.
It is.
Let's define a local variable. So something like times, number of times. So
In this
just before the call to the method, say.
here.
So yeah, integer, and it could be n or number of times,
Okay, that's-
whatever you like.
n is faster.
Okay, so n maybe equals 7.
All right, n equals 7.
Okay, let's use that value over
Yeah.
there as an argument. Let's see if it works first.
Oh, I see where you're going with that. All right. Okay, so let me compile again my tests, which I just modify. And let's run it. It does work.
Okay, so it's doing the same thing. So I think you see where I'm heading.
Oh, yeah.
The idea would be after the call to the method, say, let's print the value of n.
Right.
So here, maybe you're concerned that by acting upon the parameter n in the method say, that we've actually done something to the program that's calling the method.
That's right.
So let's test it. It's an empirical approach to programming.
All right, so now I'm just going to, how do we want to print our int now? Do we want to simply go system.out? Let's not,
Yeah, keep it simple.
all right, and we are just going to print n.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to say n equal, and then I'm just going to put n.
Oh, I think you need to
Oops.
use the concatenation. Yeah.
Block.
All right.
Wrong one. And let's see now. Chip. I compile. It works. Yep.
Okay. So here, what we've seen actually is that for primitive types, when we decrease the value of the parameter n for the method, say, we did not change the actual variable from the main method in the class test. So there will be more of this in class.
Oh yeah.
Stay tuned.
Okay, so that's cool. Now, what can we do more? Well, one thing we could do is, see here, you are calling this method asking to iterate a number of times, but maybe we don't want to iterate for too many times, or we don't want to iterate a negative number of times because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to iterate a negative number of times. Well, I think with the way you wrote it here, it wouldn't be a big problem because
nothing will happen.
Nothing will happen. But
That's
still,
right.
It's a good idea to test the preconditions. So to make sure that before you start coding anything, it has to be that the values of the parameters are actually making sense.
Right. Because it would do nothing, but maybe the programmer would not realize that this is happening. So we probably want to say, well, this is a strange call to that method if you're asking to print something a negative number of times. So let's test that. If n, yes, that's n, is less than 0, let's just start with that.
Yes.
Then, what do we want to do? We simply want to print out something.
Yeah, just an error message maybe.
Say,
Oh, yeah.
because we have this method.
Yep. So it's fast. It's shorter actually.
That's bad call.
Correct.
All right. And what do we do here after that?
Well, maybe if the value of the parameter is proper, if it's a correct value, then we can go through the actual piece of code.
Right. So if the value is less than 0, then we want to go through that branch. Else, we want to go to that branch. How do we do that? Well, we have an if here. We just say else. And we are going to say that and indentation here. Oh, this is not indented properly. Here we go. So that should work.
Yeah.
If you pass a negative number, it should say bad call. Otherwise, it's going to print what you want. Shall we test that?
Well, we should probably test it first as is to see if it is
Okay.
working fine.
So let's do that. Yes.
Okay.
So now let's try with a negative number. So, oops, and then I'm going to print that -1 times.
Yeah.
Compile. Works.
Bad call.
That worked.
So it's very important to always test all the branches of the code. So here we made sure that we would go once through the if and once through the else statement.
That's right. Okay. Now, if we wanted to do something a little bit more advanced, like not only test if this is negative, but maybe it's not too large.
Yeah, it would be silly to print a million lines of the same message. So maybe we would like to limit the number of messages that are printed to no more than 10.
Okay. So what we are going to do here is simply refuse a call that has more than 10 that require more than 10 printout. So I have an if n is less than 0. What I want to do is if n is less than 0 or n is more than 10.
Correct.
So I'm going to put some parentheses here. N is less than 0 or, this is how you create an or in Java. If it was an and, you would do like that. So or, and then n is larger than 10. And in both cases, I want to go through that branch, and in the other case, I want to go to that branch.
Absolutely.
Same thing. Oops, not what I wanted to do here. No, I want to stay here. I just want to and I'm going to try that. So very quickly, compile, execute, that works.
Okay. So maybe what we could do is change the test a little bit so that we would print the actual value of n, giving more information to the programmer. It's very important to always have meaningful information for the programmer to debug the code.
Okay. The method C was called with the parameter with we're going just to say with n equal, and then we'll put the value of n. Is that what you had in mind?
That's what I had
More or less?
in mind, yes.
Okay. That is a much better message.
Yeah.
Let's try again. So I need to compile what's util Java, and I'm going to run tests, and that works.
Cool.
Excellent. All right, so we have seen how to call methods from inside the class, from outside the class. We have a couple of iterations here. We have tests, if statement. What else can we do?
Well, I think the assignment 0 touches upon arrays,
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
so it might be a good idea to look at some arrays.
Let's try an array. Why don't we try to create a method say that gets as a parameter not a string but an array of string, much like actually our method main here that receives an array of string as parameter.
Correct.
So we can do that. This is a new method. I'll get rid of that code here. This is a new method, public static void, and void say, but say now as another type of parameter, which is a string array, and I'm going to call that messages.
So again, the compiler will not be confused, although there are two methods that are taking one parameter. In one case, it's taking a reference to a string. In the other case, it's a reference to an array of strings, and so it's not ambiguous for the compiler.
That's right. Let's actually see that. Compiler is happy with me, so
far so good.
So far so good. So what do we want to do here? We have an array of strings, and we're going to print them.
So again, we need the concept of iteration. So maybe a for loop.
A for loop going through every element of that array that we have received the parameter. So how do I do that? I'm going to iterate. So an array in Java starts at the index 0 and goes from 0 to the size of the array -1. So I am going to start at 0, and I want to iterate while this counter is less than the size of the array -1. The size of the array in Java is hidden in the length of the variable. So messages.length, messages being that parameter here, will return the number of the size of this array string.
Correct.
So I want to go from there to there, and again at each step I want to increase the size of I. So I want to go from 0, 1, 2, 3 until I reach the size -1. And what I'm going to do here is every time I am going just to print the corresponding entry in the array. So I'm just going to go system.out.print, and I want to print the element at index I of this message here, of this array. So I'm accessing this this element this way, message square bracket I, and this is going to give me the ith element of that array, and it's going to print it. Shall we try?
Yep. So we can compile this.
That works.
Compiler is happy.
And oh, but we are not calling it. Are we? All right. So maybe we want to call it.
Yes.
That's going to help in seeing if that works. So in order to call it, now I have to create an actual array that contains string.
Hmm.
So this is new. So in order to create an array of string, I have to declare a variable,
Declare the reference to the array, yeah.
which is a reference to the array. Let's do that. So I'm going to call it messages again. So to declare a variable, you always put its type and then the label that you use. So this is here a string array, and the name of the variable is messages. Okay, so now I have declared this variable. I am going to have a reference to an array of what? An array of strings. So this is not an array. This is a reference.
So this is not an array. That's a variable that we can use to designate an array, but we don't have an array yet. So
right. Okay, so, well, we need an array. So what we are going to do now is create such an array and make sure that our variable is referencing the array we are just creating. So we're going to say messages is equal to, I want to create a new array. And the way to do that is new, and then strings. And here you have to specify how many elements this array is going to hold. Okay, so I think we have said 3 here.
Correct.
Okay, so that is creating a block of memory of size large enough to hold exactly 3 what? 3 string. String is itself a reference.
Yeah, so here each cell is actually a reference to a string.
That's right. So we have a reference to 3 cells. Each cell is a reference to a string, or can hold a reference to a string. Now there are no strings yet, but this is what we have. So here I have created this block of memory. I need to fill out the array.
Can we call it, maybe, can we call our method with just that? Would this work? Can I say utils, say messages?
We can try. Say, and then messages. What do we expect that to do, though? So say, well,
go through the array, which is size 3, should access each position of this array, and now I'm expecting that it will print null 3
That's
times, not pointing at anything. That's the theory.
I'm sure this is going to work. Here, and test. No.
No. Okay. So we need to actually create string objects and store them inside this array.
That's right. So let's do that. So how do I add a string to the first entry in that array? The first element of that array, I access it through messages and then square bracket 0, because it starts at 0. And here I'm just going to put some string here. Let's say I messages the 1 am and messages 2 hungry. We good?
We're good.
All right. So now I have created this array. I have 3 actual strings. So these messages points at this block. This block has 3 cells. The first cell points at the string I. The second cell points at the string am, and the third cell points at the string hungry. And now I'm going to print that, calling that method, which is going to iterate and print every one of these entries. So let's try that. Here. Okay. It kind of worked, as in it printed something.
Yeah, it's not pretty.
It's not pretty.
I think it's missing some spaces.
It is, yes, it is short on spaces here. I'm hungry. Okay, that's not what I wanted. I want to print all of these strings, but maybe put a little space in between. Why don't I just prepend a space like that?
Sounds like a good start.
Okay, so now I'm going to, every time you print, we'll just put a space and then print the next one. Let's try that. So Java utils, Java, That works, and then I execute it. All
So
right.
it's a good start. We see the space in between, and maybe that would be good enough. But I think we can do better than that.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's not good enough for us. We don't want to start with a space.
Yeah. So how can we tell the compiler here that we should not be printing a space if we are at the first iteration of this loop?
That's right. So we need to, I mean, some people might think, well, we'll just move the space after, but then we'll have a space after, and we don't want that either, because that's not part of the string. So we just want space in between the actual strings.
Yeah, it would actually be pretty challenging to debug this kind of things, because it wouldn't, when we would be printing the string, it would actually look good on the screen, and we may not realize that there was an extra space at the end.
That's right. So, well, it is simple here. When do we want to have this space? Well, we want to have a space every step except for the first one.
Correct.
So I can simply go if I is not 0, that is, it is not the first iteration, then I am going to print out.print a space. There we go. And in every cases, afterwards, I'm just going to print the message.
Sounds good.
All right, let's do that. Compile that. I execute that. All right.
Cool.
So it worked. It's still, what I don't like is now my
The prompt,
is right after. So really what I would like is to have a new line at the end.
Yeah, only and every time you want it at the end.
Just at the end. So how do I do that? Well, see, at the end, I could see if this is the last iteration and then add a new line here. But in fact, if I just print that after the loop, then I am fine. I will print exactly what I have, and then I'm just going to go system.out.print line. And that's it.
That should work.
Try again. Wonderful.
Cool.
All right. So we have done.
So I think all the methods that we looked at so far were methods that were not returning anything. In the assignment 0, we have some methods that are returning a value. In fact, if I remember correctly, some of the methods are returning the reference to an array. So it might be a good idea to have an example where we would look at a method that returns the reference of an array.
The reference of an array.
Or the...
or not.
Or not.
Or not.
Or not. Return the reference of a string.
I'm not sure what array we would be returning here.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's start with a string.
Okay.
It is a reference.
It's a reference.
So you were half right.
Well, we promised that we would be goofing here and there, so
yes.
Here we are. I did it.
All right. So so we have this method here that is already getting an array as a parameter, and it's printing it. We could use that. We could use a similar method, but instead of printing the resulting the content of the array, we may want to create a string, which is the concatenation of all the elements in that array.
That's correct. Very often in class, we're going to have a situation where we don't want to display right away the content of the various data elements that we're working with. What we would like to do is glue them all together and return this as one string to the caller.
That's right. Okay, so let's try that. I'm going to create a new method here, but this method should now return an element. So it used to be a void for all the methods we have created so far, meaning they were not returning any value.
Yes.
But now we want to return something, and specifically we want to return a string. So public static string is the signature here, and I am going to call this method concat. And concat, which is going to create a concatenation of all the elements in my array, will get the same type of parameter here, messages.
Correct.
Okay, now I want to do pretty much that, like the method say here, but instead of printing it out, what I want to do is basically add all of that into one single string, which I can then return.
That's right. You're going to be accumulating some result. So you need a variable to accumulate the result that we're going to be computing.
All right, so I have a string result, which is going to be what I return. And initially, I want that to be empty.
So this is still a reference to a string, but it's the empty string.
Exactly. So now I am simply going to go a bit faster here, I'm just going to copy that. So I have here something that iterates over every element of my array.
Correct.
And instead of printing, what I want to do is add whatever I used to print at the end of my string result, which I can do by result equals result. So what it was before plus, and then
A space.
the space.
And similarly on the next line, we're
Here.
going to be adding at the end of the string result the value of messages of position I.
That's right. Now,
What if we were to compile
let's
just like
compile
this?
that. How about that? How about that?
Yes.
Oh no.
Oh. So here again, the compiler is very chatty. It says you're missing a return statement. So it's really telling us what the problem is with the method.
Right. Oops. Where is that showing us? Yeah, it should show that. Yes, we are doing everything here, but we are not returning anything. So we need to, at the end, say, okay, return this result that you have created.
Fantastic.
And now the compiler is probably happier with us, hopefully. Yes.
Good.
We are still not calling that method though.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to here and try to call that method on the same message.
Okay.
But if I were to call utils dot concat messages, this will take my array and create a string, which is the concatenation of all this data, and return it. So the call here is going to give me a string, which then I can use. How about I use it to print it? And I can print it using this other method that I've created here, which is able to print a single string. So I can do that by saying utils.say utils.concat messages.
And then if you want to use, so you're using the version that prints a single message.
Yes.
Okay.
So I should be going through this one here.
Okay, cool.
So try. So Java tests and Java test. Yep. The same string now is printed twice. From here and from here.
Cool. And
All right.
probably we're reaching the
Look
end
at the time.
of what can be recorded on the YouTube live stream.
That's right.
So,
Like pros. Incredible. On the nose. Noon.
yeah, and so I think now students should be ready to get started with this assignment 0.
That's right. And we'll talk about it next week. And in the meantime, so let us know what you thought about this session, if you thought it was useful, and if you'd like to see more of those, or it's probably not what you need, and you have better things to do with your Saturdays. And I'll see some of you tomorrow, some of you on Wednesday, and for you, I'm not sure. When is the next time you see this?
It's on Monday, and yes, so stay tuned. There could be some email messages informing you about a possible class room change, so stay tuned.
All right. Okay. See you. Have a great weekend.
Bye now.